Imagine that you're just sitting at your desk, working away, and then someone comes to your door with a problem. And the challenge is to avoid reacting instinctively and potentially turning something that you could de escalate into a confrontation, opposed to managing the situation as best you can and responding in a way that essentially de escalates a situation that you weren't prepared for. In order to do the latter, it's good to have a system. And in this video, I want to share with you a four-step system that will help you deal with the conversations, the difficult ones that appear out of the blue. Move one is to regulate your response. That means calm yourself down. It's very natural for an individual to feel potentially threatened when someone comes to their door unannounced with a problem you really don't know much about and can come across as being attacking of you or just looking for just conflict. And it's so important that you manage your emotional state when this happens. And a very simple way to do that is just simply to breathe, calm down, and just try to get a little bit more information, right? Rather than just saying something that's on your mind right away and potentially amplifying the situation, making it worse. So the first step is to regulate your emotional response. Now, on the other hand, very similarly, if the other individual is really in a heightened state, what you can do is what's called share your calm, meaning that if that person's at a really emotional high level, then there's a chance that they have a difficult time expressing themselves and they're not going to be able to have a very good conversation with you and truly explain what's going on, because when emotions are involved, it's hard to think clearly. So by sharing your calm, you essentially model the behavior that you expect by being calm and hoping that the other person catches a bit of that calm, it de-escalates, and then you can move on to the next step, which is essentially gathering more information. Move two is to listen before you solve. Listen before you solve. And this means to suspend any judgment that you may have about the situation and really just try to get a little bit more information as to the reason why this is happening right now. Because the reality is that conflict, when it shows up on your door, rarely is an isolated event. It's something that has just essentially exploded or come to the forefront that's been building up over time or because of a reason that happened before in the past. And so by just listening and asking questions, letting the other person feel heard, you help not only clear your own mind before you respond, but you also allow the other person to feel heard because they're expressing themselves. And you're also showing interest and showing that you're trying to be involved in this by listening versus diagnosing and giving your own perspective or saying words that initially come to your mind right away. Move three is to respond if you are ready. You're calm, or more or less calm, because you've managed to regulate your emotional response. And you've also taken steps to share your calm, and hopefully the other person has come down a little bit in terms of their emotional involvement in the situation. And then you've gathered a little bit more information that dives a little bit deeper into the root cause of why this is happening now. You've listened, they felt heard, and you feel in a good position to respond and share your perspective. If that's the case, say what you have to say and see where the conversation leads and work to resolve the situation. If, however, you don't necessarily feel comfortable that that's achieved at that point, then you move to the next move. Move four is to defer without dismissing. So at this point, you realize perhaps the emotional intensity hasn't been able to come down. Either you're in a still heightened state or you haven't been able to bring the other individual down and calm them down a little bit. And so you feel that because of this emotional elevation, it's going to be very difficult to have a productive conversation. And as such, or ensuing, that you haven't been able to collect the necessary information through conversation to really be able to address this effectively. If this happens, then you simply tell the other individual that you'd like to defer this conversation to the next day or to a time where you both are available, because you want to give this the attention it deserves, but you don't feel that this is the right moment to do so because of the elevated emotional state. But because it's such an important thing, you want to find a time where you can address it. So you're deferring it, yes, but you're showing that you are not dismissing it and it will be addressed. That becomes a very powerful fourth move if that moment you don't feel comfortable and capable of dealing with the issue that's just come up. It is important to remember that oftentimes the most difficult conversations you have are not the ones that you have time to prepare for. It is the ones that appear out of the blue. And when those occur, it is important to be prepared to manage emotions, gather more information, respond when you feel and only when you feel comfortable to do so, and be prepared to defer without dismissing if necessary. Good luck.